As dawn broke over the horizon, the first rays of sunlight poured through the motel window, illuminating the dim room. The faint scent of stale cigarettes and cheap whiskey lingered in the air, reminding me of the tumultuous night that had unfolded. I stirred in the bed, the cheap mattress sagging under my weight, my heart heavy with confusion and pain. The lingering thoughts of Sharon flooded my mind, her laughter, her touch, and the life we once shared. But last night was a stark contrast to those memories. I had tried to drown my sorrows, moving from beer to whiskey, hoping to numb the ache in my chest. I felt shattered, completely lost without her. As I picked up my phone, its screen lit up with notifications. My heart sank. 10 missed calls from Sharon, a torrent of messages begging for my attention. I opened the first message, and with each subsequent text, my heart raced faster. 8:10 a.m. Frank, please pick me up. This was a mistake. I made a terrible choice. 8:15 a.m. Please come. I need you. I don't want to be here anymore. 8:30 a.m. I love you. I'm sorry for everything. Just come get me. Each message pierced through the fog of alcohol, bringing with it a wave of anxiety. What did she mean by a mistake? Did she regret what had happened with Glenn? The thought of another man sharing intimate moments with her felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I had loved her deeply, but could I forgive her for this betrayal? With a sigh, I threw off the sheets, feeling the cool air of the room against my skin. I needed to confront her. As much as I wanted to ignore the reality of the situation, I knew that we couldn't avoid this. My heart ached at the thought of her being with someone else, but I also knew that she was still my wife, and despite the hurt, I loved her. After a quick shower, I dressed and steeled myself for the drive back to the Bandolin's house. My heart raced with every mile I drove, anticipation mingling with dread. When I finally arrived, I was greeted by an unsettling sight. The front door stood ajar, and through the window, I could see people milling about inside, their laughter a stark contrast to my inner turmoil. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation that awaited. Inside, the living room was a chaotic mess. Empty bottles littered the floor, remnants of last night's revelry, and clothes were strewn about haphazardly. In the corner, I spotted Sharon, sitting on the couch, her hair disheveled, looking utterly lost. The sight of her brought a flood of memories, both joyous and painful, crashing down on me. "Frank!" she exclaimed, her eyes widening as she jumped up, a mixture of relief and guilt washing over her face. "I'm so glad you came. I'm sorry, I made a huge mistake." "What happened, Sharon?" I demanded, my voice more strained than I intended. "Tell me everything." She took a step toward me, her eyes pleading. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. Len was so charming, but it wasn't what I wanted. I just wanted a little excitement, but now I feel empty. I love you, Frank. I don't want anyone else but you." The pain I felt was palpable. "You shattered everything we built together, Sharon. You hurt me. You don't just get to say you're sorry and expect everything to be okay. I know, and I deserve your anger, but I can't lose you. Please forgive me," she pleaded, tears pooling in her eyes. "Why did you think this was a good idea?" I asked, the hurt seeping into my voice. "I thought it would bring us closer, but I realized it's tearing us apart. I don't want this life anymore. I want my family back," she said, her voice trembling. Her words echoed in my mind. Did she truly understand the depth of her actions? Did she realize the fragility of trust and love? I took a deep breath, trying to collect my thoughts. "You need to show me that you mean it. We can't just go back to how things were. I don't trust you right now." "I understand," Just give me a chance to prove myself. I promise I'll do whatever it takes, she said, her voice filled with desperation. As I looked into her eyes, I saw a flicker of the woman I had fallen in love with, but it was overshadowed by the pain of betrayal. It's going to take time, Sharon. We have to work through this together. I need to know you're committed to making things right. I promise I won't let you down again, Frank, she replied, her voice filled with hope. I hesitated, the weight of the moment heavy on my shoulders. Could I really trust her again? Could we rebuild what had been broken? Taking her hand felt both comforting and terrifying. Let's start over, but it won't be easy. We need to work on our communication and trust. I'll do everything I can, Frank. Just don't give up on me, she said, her voice filled with determination. As we stood there, a mix of emotions flooded my heart: pain, hope, and a longing for the love we had once shared. I knew the road ahead would be challenging, filled with difficult conversations and moments of doubt. But as I looked into her eyes, I realized that love could still be found amid the wreckage of our hearts. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past slowly begin to lift. Perhaps, just perhaps, we could heal together, taking it one step at a time. In that moment, I chose to believe in the possibility of a brighter future, one built on honesty, understanding, and a renewed commitment to each other. As we stood together, ready to face the challenges ahead, I held on to the hope that love could indeed conquer even the deepest wounds. I heard her whisper, "Oh yes, Glenn, this is my night." The words crashed over me like a cold wave, freezing me in place. I stood there, heart pounding, disbelief washing over me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had given Sharon everything: my love, my trust, my life, and now she was throwing it all away for a quick fling. I wanted to scream, to lash out in anger, but instead, I forced myself to remain calm. I had to think clearly, especially for the sake of my children. I promised myself that the next morning, I would devise a plan to protect them from the fallout of this betrayal and confront Sharon with the truth of her actions. As dawn broke, the weight of my broken family settled heavily on my shoulders. I woke up feeling a sense of dread. I had to gather my thoughts and figure out the best way to move forward. After a long shower, I dressed and drove to my mother's house to pick up the kids. I wanted them safe from the emotional storm brewing between Sharon and me. Seeing my children brought me both joy and sorrow. I realized that no matter what happened with Sharon, I had to focus on being the best father I could be. As we spent the day together, their laughter and innocence momentarily washed away my pain. I promised myself to keep our lives as normal as possible during this difficult time. I would do everything in my power to shield them from the turmoil surrounding us. That evening, after putting the kids to bed, determination filled my heart. I would not allow Sharon's choices to dictate my future or the future of my children. We would get through this together, and I would do everything I could to protect their happiness. I was done being a victim. It was time to fight for my family. I lost my appetite that morning, but forced myself to get out of bed and go to the restaurant. After everything that had happened, I felt emotionally drained. Sitting alone at a small table, I felt lost. I ordered scrambled eggs, toast, and black coffee, hoping that the familiar routine would provide some comfort. But as the minutes passed, my breakfast remained mostly untouched. I forced myself to drink cup after cup of coffee, just to keep my mind from spiraling into despair. How could Sharon do this to me? I always believed love was strong enough to overcome any obstacle, but I never thought betrayal would come from the one I trusted the most. I felt like I was in a fog, grappling with a mix of anger and heartbreak. It was like a heavy weight on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I kept asking myself, how could she think cheating was okay? If only she had been honest about her feelings. If I had known she felt unloved, I would have done everything to make her feel special and appreciated. Instead, I felt a surge of injustice. I didn't deserve this pain. When I finally finished my coffee, I paid the bill and stepped outside into the cool morning air. My phone buzzed, interrupting my thoughts. It was Sharon. I took a deep breath and answered, bracing myself for what she might say. "Frank, are you mad at me?" Her voice trembled, and I could hear the panic in her words. "Do you really need to ask? How can I not be mad?" I replied, my voice tight with emotion. "You've ruined everything. Did you ever think about me while you were with Glenn? Did you tell him you loved him? How could you betray me? You broke your vows. What do you have to say for yourself?" "Frank," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I was feeling down about us. I just wanted to be with someone else for one night. I didn't mean to fall in love with him or hurt you." "That's your excuse?" I shot back, my anger rising. "You could have talked to me. If you were unhappy, I would have listened. But you chose to sleep with a stranger. You humiliated me. Do you want me to take you back?" "No, Sharon. It's over." I could hear her sobbing on the other end, and my heart softened for a moment. "Frank, please don't say that. I love you. Glenn means nothing to me. I just want my family back. Can't we fix this? You're everything to me. You're my soulmate. Don't do this." "Then why did you let him touch you? You betrayed my trust. You risked everything we built together. It's unforgivable. Frank, please, I'll make it up to you. Just give me a chance. I love you, and I need you in my life. I can't imagine living without you." Taking a deep breath, I fought to keep my emotions in check. "You should have thought about that before you were with Glenn. I don't want to hear more excuses. You wanted to feel alive? Congratulations. You destroyed our family. I'm not coming back. Don't call me again." I hung up, my heart racing. Anger and heartbreak swirled inside me, creating a storm of emotions I could hardly contain. I felt like I was falling apart, but a flicker of determination ignited within me. I couldn't let her actions define my future. I needed to protect my kids from knowing their mother had been unfaithful, so I decided to call a lawyer. After talking to the lawyer, I learned that Sharon had reached out to my mother, asking about the kids and where I was. My mom explained that I was upset and needed space, and Sharon had cried, saying she was confused. My mom suggested it might be better for the kids to stay with her for a few more days until things calmed down. My children were happy to see me, but I could tell they missed their mother. They asked where she was, and I told them she was busy with something important and would be back soon. We played games, had dinner, and as I hugged and kissed them goodnight, I felt a pang of guilt. They deserved a stable home, and I had to do everything to ensure they wouldn't suffer because of our broken family. That night, sleep eluded me. I couldn't shake the memories of our life together, of all the laughter and love we once shared. Anger mixed with sadness, knowing everything had changed in an instant. I wanted to drive by our house one last time, to see the place that had once been filled with warmth and joy. When I saw it, tears streamed down my face. I cried for what I had lost, for the life I had built with Sharon, and for my kids who deserved better. Only the kitchen light was on, signaling that Sharon was home alone. I felt a rush of conflicting emotions. I still had feelings for her, despite everything she had done. But I also knew that trusting her again would be impossible. With a heavy heart, I turned my car around, needing to distance myself from that painful scene. The next morning, I faced the day with a newfound resolve. I had a lot to do, and I couldn't let my emotions control my actions. I returned to the same restaurant, ordered eggs, toast, and coffee. And this time, I actually finished everything. I called my mom to check on my kids, assuring her of my love and promising to see them soon. I also contacted my executive assistant, letting her know I would be handling personal matters for a few days. She sensed something was wrong, but I promised to share more later. As I drove back to my motel, my mind raced with everything I had to accomplish. My phone rang. It was Sharon again. I hesitated, but eventually pulled over to answer. "Frank, I'm so sorry. I miss you," she said, her voice breaking. "Sorry doesn't fix this. You broke my trust, and I can't forgive you. I'll be filing for divorce and for custody of the kids. I need to protect them from you." I hung up, feeling drained but also stronger. The storm was far from over, but I was ready to fight for my future, my children, and my peace. The article was published in the Sunday newspaper, igniting a firestorm of gossip and intrigue. It was front-page news, adorned with a large, blurred photograph of couples arriving and departing, their identities cleverly concealed yet unmistakable to those who knew them. The story extended across 4 additional pages, featuring numerous photos. Despite the blurring, discerning readers could easily recognize the couples by their vehicles and fashion choices, given their prominence in the community. By Monday, the air was thick with chatter about the scandal. Several ministers weighed in, lamenting the decline of moral standards, while civic leaders condemned the circumstances. Lawsuits emerged, but they led to little resolution. Some businesses experienced a drop in customers, and many couples found themselves heading toward divorce court. For me, it was all rather amusing, almost a sense of poetic justice for the pain I had endured after losing my wife and family. Even if people figured out my involvement, I found solace in knowing that I had taken a stand for myself. Revenge, in a way, felt satisfying, a balm for my wounded heart. In the months that followed, Sharon relentlessly pursued reconciliation, but I remained steadfast in my resolve, refusing to let her back into my life. She cried, begged, and pleaded, yet I kept my distance. As time passed, I began to heal, knowing I had made the right choices to protect my children and carve out a better future for myself. Though I still cared for her from a distance, it broke my heart not to be physically present during such a challenging time. Sharon had her sister by her side, who assured me she was being taken care of, but my concern lingered. 5 months later, I explained my circumstances and decided to take a leave from work to return home, especially with the baby on the way. I didn't want to miss those crucial first months of life. Initially, there was a significant distance between Sharon and me, but we gradually fell back into familiar routines. During our separation, she found a remote job, which she maintained even after the baby was born. Life began to improve, and she was often home with the child. However, one neighbor began to raise my suspicions. A married man with children, he frequently offered to check in on Sharon. I initially dismissed it as mere neighborly concern, but my unease lingered. During the pandemic, my sister-in-law moved in to help, and her extended stay made me uncomfortable, especially with the neighbor's continued presence. As I returned to my job in the emergency room, my workload increased, and I felt the weight of my responsibilities. I don't recall the exact moment it happened, but soon my wife and sister-in-law started spending considerable time with that neighbor. They visited parks with the kids, attended movies together, and he often invited them over for barbecues when I was working late shifts. It felt as if I were slowly being pushed out of my own life, replaced by this man. One day, I fell ill at work and returned home early. Upon entering, I found my sister-in-law lounging on the couch with my baby and the neighbor's child. It struck me as strange, but I thought it was just her babysitting. When I inquired about Sharon, her demeanor shifted. She grew quiet and quickly changed the topic. When I searched the house for Sharon and couldn't locate her, I felt an unsettling suspicion creep in. The neighbor's child was present, so I thought he might know where my wife was. Part of me worried that she was with him, but I didn't want to believe it. I decided to walk over to his house and ring the doorbell, but no one answered. His car was usually parked in the garage, which made it hard to tell if he was home. Returning home, I noticed my sister-in-law on the phone, whispering. She abruptly hung up when she spotted me, raising my concerns further. I resisted the urge to ask who she had been talking to, fearing it might confirm my suspicions about my wife. Sharon arrived about 20 minutes later, dressed up and carrying takeout. When she said she had simply gone out for dinner with the neighbor, I felt a wave of skepticism wash over me. Why would she bother dressing up just for a quick drive-through? I sensed she was lying, but without proof, I hesitated to confront her. Instead, I chose to hire a private investigator to keep an eye on things. It didn't take long for the investigator to return with evidence of infidelity. He provided me with photographs and videos documenting my wife and the neighbor together, including moments that indicated intimacy. The sight of them kissing was the final straw, compelling me to file for divorce. I still had my apartment lease from the pandemic, which offered me a way out. I didn't want to remain in a house tainted by betrayal. So, I began moving my belongings into the apartment, preparing to serve her the divorce papers. We lived in a small town, and the thought of her being happy with him was unbearable. So, during Memorial Day weekend, I organized a large cookout and invited friends and family. I even rented a bounce house for the kids and arranged fireworks for the evening. Just before we lit the fireworks, I gathered the adults and shared the evidence of the affair. My wife and the neighbor initially seemed oblivious to the unfolding drama, but as whispers spread among the crowd, they began to realize the gravity of the situation. When my wife approached me, desperately attempting to explain herself, I stood firm, telling her I would be filing for divorce. While she scrambled to salvage her marriage, I turned my focus to our son, seeking to provide him comfort amidst the chaos. In the aftermath of the revelations, my wife attempted to defend her actions, claiming that I had been emotionally unavailable during her pregnancy. Yet, I had sacrificed my time at work for her and our child's well-being. The neighbor, feeling the community's backlash, eventually severed ties with my wife, likely regretting his involvement in the affair. As we navigated the divorce process, it became evident that my wife had lost her way. Our children struggled with their feelings towards her. They had seen the impact of her actions and, understandably, chose to side with me. My wife's attempts to manipulate their affections fell flat as they recognized the betrayal she had committed. The divorce proceedings were challenging but necessary. We agreed to sell the house and split the proceeds. Personally, I was relieved to leave behind the memories that haunted me within those walls. Once the divorce was finalized and the house sold, I used my share to purchase a condo near my oldest son, who was beginning to build a family of his own. As time passed, our children gradually distanced themselves from their mother. She was angry, but had been drifting away from them long before the affair was revealed. It was evident that her actions had repercussions, and her new relationship quickly soured, leaving her feeling even more isolated. She spiraled further, leading to a DUI incident that shocked me. I had never seen her act in such a reckless manner during our marriage. My heart hardened. I felt no sympathy for her plight. I knew she had brought this chaos upon herself, and I could only hope our children would find solace in their own lives. Over time, I learned to heal from the wounds inflicted by the betrayal. I focused on being the best father I could be, sharing the lessons I had learned about love, kindness, and self-worth. I wanted my children to understand that their actions mattered and that they had the power to shape their futures. As I moved forward, I discovered that I not only survived the pain of divorce, but learned to thrive beyond it. The hurt transformed into motivation, inspiring me to become a better person for myself and my children. I found joy in the little moments and embraced the love that remained within my family. My kids became my driving force, and I hoped they would take the lessons of resilience and compassion with them into their own lives. In the end, while I had lost my wife, I rediscovered a deeper sense of self. The journey was challenging, but I was grateful for the opportunity to grow, heal, and ultimately find happiness again.